Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. We got a lot of stuff to get to today. We are going to be very busy. We start with some COVID-19 news. And Joe Biden, after a lot of pressure from various sources, will be sharing AstraZeneca doses of the vaccine the United States is not using with other nations after a safety review. Now, the next step is, of course, lifting that vaccine patent to make sure all the intellectual availability is there for the intellectual property is available for other countries to use. And also that comes as India continues to shatter case records as international aid is going to be required. In policing news, Justice Department will be investigating the Louisville police after the Breonna Taylor shooting. And Andrew Brown Jr.'s family will see a body cam video this is in North Carolina after a police shooting. Will get you caught up on what that situation will mean, and there's a state of emergency declared there. Also, meanwhile, a very interesting situation as the Supreme Court enters what is calling its busy season about gun rights and the possibility of a major decision being made. First major gun rights case in more than a decade in regards to New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Corlett. This is about concealed carry legislation in the state of New York. So the Supreme Court have a potential to hand down a major gun rights decision. This is Newsflash. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We got a lot of stuff to get into. So we start at the top here with this COVID-19 news. The Biden administration has been under intense pressure to address the devastating coronavirus crisis in India and intends to share up to 60 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine with other nations, so long as the plant where it's manufactured clears a safety review be conducted by the Food and Drug Administration, officials said Monday. So it wasn't like, oh yeah, like I think the chronology of it here is very important because he didn't necessarily say right off the bat, like, oh, we're just going to give it to, of course we're going to give it, but it's going to pass the safety review. No, it was a lot of pressure. Then the safety review passed, and then they agreed to share, but that was only after the safety review. So, so this was I think it's very important to declare here. This was the result of pressure from people on, mostly to Biden's left, kind of humanitarians and an international basis, saying, come on, like let's look at what's going on here, especially in India with the horrific situation that we have seen. So the announcement, first reported by the Associated Press, came after Biden spoke with Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India, committing that the United States and India will work closely together in the fight against COVID-19, according to statements from the White House. But the commitment is a tricky one to make. The AstraZeneca doses are manufactured in a Baltimore plant owned by Emergent Biosolutions, where the production has been halted amid fears of contamination. And this guy, supposedly, this is going to be a very interesting story with the CEO. Just prior to the emergent lab getting busted for safety problems, there was a massive selling off of the stock. $10 million worth of stock was sold off by the CEO right as that was happening. So it's a very interesting thing to watch. It's definitely a thing to, shall we say, file there in the back of the cabinet for the investigations that may come after this, because obviously right now the most important thing is getting that vaccine. If it's AstraZeneca, if that works, that's good. Anything to get in there. And of course, really the most primary thing that India needs at the moment, they are just at a level of where they need to contain the cases. Vaccines won't really help because so many people are already infected. It's about just getting the basic resources that a hospital needs, because their hospitals are really overflowing right now with patients. So many people getting infected with this virus, just straight vertical line up. So, yeah, the New York Times has reported extensively on problems at the plant, which had to throw out millions of doses of AstraZeneca between October and January, and later discarded up to 15 million doses of the vaccine developed by the Johnson & Johnson. Also because of concerns of possible contamination. So a huge safety screw-up here. 15 million doses of the vaccine was discarded from Johnson & Johnson. Millions more from AstraZeneca here. Not a good situation whatsoever. AstraZeneca's vaccine, unlike those of Pfizer and Moderna, has also not been granted emergency use authorization by the Food and Drug Administration, and the administration would not specify which countries will receive the vaccine. The situation in India is dire, though. The country is experiencing what may be the worst crisis any nation suffered since the pandemic began. Hospitals are overflowing, and the desperate patients are dying as they wait to see doctors. On Sunday alone, the Indian government reported more than 349,000 new infections. To put in perspective, our last reported daily case total was about 30,000, and this is about 10 times more people than that. So, yeah, Biden has already released a total of 4 million doses of AstraZeneca to Canada and Mexico, saying last week it was considering sending more overseas. I think this is, it's a very, very important thing to nail down on here. Like, we need to as a country that has really, like, done a fairly good job vaccinating its people, get these vaccines out and into the world. Like, this is, like, if you want to be, like, the best way to, like, reestablish credibility as a nation, which so many of these liberals seem desperate to want to do. Like, oh, Trump, he ruined our standing on the world stage. We need to get it back. What do we need to do? Stay in Afghanistan for many years longer. No, that's not what we need to do. What we need to do is send these vaccines to countries that need it, when we don't need it anymore, because we used we have all the intellectual property, we poured the money into the situation, and we benefited from something that we were really only able to attain because of our previous wealth as a nation, while a bunch of other countries really struggle with this. Monday's move came after Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, publicly announced a series of steps short of actually providing the vaccine. But as the conversations intensified among the National Security Council, it became clear that alliance politics along with saving lives were all at stake. So yeah, it's such a ridiculous conversation that is even being had in the first place. Like, there is a clear moral reason, and of course, it's not like India doesn't have vaccines, but they just don't have really the production, I think, capacity. They've vaccinated about 130 million people. That in the United States, it's roughly a third of all the people in the country, but in India, it's something like 9-10% of all the people in the country. So they have a much bigger population and a long way to go on that. But it is just absolutely nonsensical that things like the vaccine patents, getting vaccines overseas, like, it is crazy that we are still holding out on that. And I mean, even if it's only for the kind of globalist, liberal foreign policy position of reestablishing our position as A1 on the world stage, then yes, if that's the conclusion, if that's how you get to the conclusion that it's necessary to give vaccines to developing nations, that's fine by me. But as long as you just continue to give them out, because it's so important that stuff actually gets done and out there. So that's a good sign. That looks like we are getting to that as well. But yeah, it is really rough worldwide. So yeah, a global coronavirus surge that's driven by the devastation in India continues to break daily records and run rampant in much of the world, even as vaccinations steadily ramp up in wealthy countries, and more than 1 billion shots have been given globally. Let's get a little bit more on India. India is recording more than a third of all the new daily global cases, averaging more than 260,000 new daily cases over the past week. The country's sudden surge is driven by the spread of a newer variant, and it's casting increasing doubt on the official death toll of nearly 200,000, with more than 2,000 people dying every day. Experts say the official numbers, however staggering, represent just a part of the virus's spread, with hospitals overwhelmed and lacking critical supplies like oxygen. So, India is home to the Serum Institute, one of the world's largest vaccine maker, but only about 8.6% of India's population have received one shot of the vaccine. It surge led Indian government's decision to withhold exports of doses that many low and middle-income countries were relying on. The vaccine rollout in Africa, which is already slower than it is in any other continent, could come to a near halt because of suspension, because they were actually giving vaccines to developing countries, and they stopped it because they really needed them at home. Public health experts say that the number of global cases is most likely surging because more contagious virus variants are spreading as people are starting to let their guards down. Of course, that's how the virus works. It's trying to stay alive. It's adapting. and it is kind of moving from host to host to host here, and that is kind of how it works. So, all right, let's move on now to our next story, and it's kind of two twin stories about social justice here. And policing. So, Attorney General, previously we were in the New York Times, Cheryl Gay Stolberg in the New York Times reporting, but now we have David Nakamura on national security and policing in the Washington Post, talking about how the Attorney General Merrick Garland announced on Monday that the Justice Department will open a civil investigation into the Louisville Metro Police Department 13 months after a shooting death of Breonna Taylor, a black woman whose killing was among the flashpoints that sparked mass social justice protests across the nation last summer. So this is obviously coming right after he definitely a sign that at least, we've seen investigations happen before. I think Obama did some similar things with various police departments, and they hadn't really turned out too much. But this is definitely a step that you would expect a Democratic administration to take to try and use the power of their the executive branch to try and rein in some of these police departments that have really gone crazy. Garland said the federal pattern or practice probe will seek to determine whether the Louisville police had engaged in a history of abusive and unlawful tactics with little accountability, marking the second time in 5 days he has sought to use the federal power to examine a local law enforcement agency's use of deadly force. Last week, of course, he did that with Minneapolis. So, this kind of stuff is a little bit hard to prove. As you can imagine, it's tough as hell to get one police officer to face punishment and face scrutiny for something they've done, let alone, a whole police department for a history of repeated abuse. You got to be pretty bad to fall victim to that. It is really very, very interesting to see how, what is going to be coming in these investigations. Will a new leaf be turned when it comes to how the government is going to be, what are the, so pretty much the bounds for this probe will be, Garland said the Louisville investigation will seek to determine whether the department engages in unreasonable force, unconstitutional searches and seizures, and unlawful executions of search warrants on private homes. It'll also examine how the Louisville police tactics impact racial groups. So, that's going to be an interesting thing to look at, the disparities that are going to come out of this investigation or may come out of this investigation. Maybe they won't. You never know. With regards to how police stop for various crimes, black, white, Asian, all that stuff. So the goal, Garland said, is to ensure the policing policies and practices are constitutional and lawful. So, obviously, with the wake of the Breonna Taylor shooting, the Louisville Police Department fired one officer, and the city agreed to pay Taylor's family $12 million. During the mass protests that erupted after Floyd's death, the civil rights advocates often called for accountability for Taylor and numerous other black people killed by police. And Garland's twin announcement over the past 5 days reflected the urgency with which the Biden administration is aiming to address abusive policing. The Trump administration sought to end such investigations, which had been used with increasing frequency in the final years of President Barack Obama's tenure. And it was really interesting how, the first black president responded to Black Lives Matter, and what, a lot of his apologists say, he wanted to do more, but it just wasn't the right political climate. He was incredibly harsh on the protests after Freddie Gray really turned pretty violent, and didn't really give a lot of oxygen and support to some of the demands that the Black Lives Matter movement had to, as we're trying to push. And it was incredibly frustrating for a lot of people at the time, but in a weird way, the political atmosphere around the Trump era, and especially obviously with the pandemic and for a bunch of reasons, the Black Lives Matter movement really caught fire, obviously, last summer. So, that is a very big deal. But such cases, obviously, they take months to complete, experts said, and broad reforms can be slow to take hold, even if the DOJ pursues a court-approved negotiated settlement known as a consent decree with the local law enforcement agency. Vinita Gupta, who helped oversee several DOJ investigations during the Obama administration, joined Garland's leadership team last week as Associate Attorney General, the number 3 ranking position, much to the chagrin, by the way, of many Senate GOP members. So that should be something to watch. All right, let's turn our attention over to what's going on with Andrew Brown Jr. over in North Carolina. So this is Elizabeth City. So this is a news conference. This is a civil rights lawyer, Benjamin Crump, who is representing the family, at least in some capacity, and pretty much made the case for why the body camera footage of this shooting should be released.
It's so important, y'all, that we not let them sweep this under the rug, because apparently before you all showed up, they just wanted to sweep it under the rug, as they have done other brothers and sisters who have been unjustifiably killed by the people who are supposed to protect and serve us. What is it on this video that is so damning that you will risk your career and risk losing your job so the people can't see the video? What is it? Don't we have a right to due process? Why do the police get to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner? So what we're here for in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, while all America is watching today and all the world will be watching tomorrow, is to say, Sheriff Wooten, you don't need to say no more. Just show the video.
Show that video, and it looks like they are going to have to do it. So family members were told they could see the video at 11:30 a.m. on Monday, but they were still waiting at 1:30 p.m. Lawyers for the family said they would hold a news conference after viewing the footage, which can answer some of their questions about the moments Brown was killed on Wednesday while the authorities were executing a search warrant. Yeah, so it's expected to be video shown from the deputies' body cameras, so it's going to be shown to the family first, which I think makes sense. Officials in Elizabeth City and the surrounding Pasquotank County, I guess you could say, I'm not sure about the pronunciation there, issued emergency declarations on Monday morning, citing a potential period of civil unrest, so that could be a bit of a problem there. Nothing good when they're expecting civil unrest from the actions of this police officer here. The decision to show family members the video came amid growing appeals to release it, including from the county sheriff and the state's governor. We want transparency, Tommy Wooten, the Pasquotank County sheriff, said in a videotape statement on Saturday. So this is actually even the sheriff coming out and saying it. He's not the one holding it back here. Him and the governor, who's also a Democrat, coming out and saying, we want this out there. It's only going to brew, like, it's only going to loom larger if it's under wraps. If it's hidden, it will grow in power. It's going to grow in influence, and that is how more tensions are raised, and the temperature gets higher and higher in these debates, and which is really, it's not good for the community overall. So the footage was turned over to the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, Sheriff Wooten said, and he asked that the agency that agency to confirm that releasing the video would not undermine its investigation. If the confirmation was received, the county planned to file a motion in court, most likely on Monday, to have the video footage publicly released. We know people want answers, Sheriff Wooten said. We know you're angry. We understand and respect that. We're asking for your patience and your support as we work to do the right thing. So pretty much going through all the legal hoops first here at this point. His office said that he had also asked the North Carolina Sheriff's Association to appoint an outside sheriff's department to conduct an internal affairs investigation of everyone involved, said Daniel Fogg, the chief deputy for Pasquotank County. Harry Daniels is a lawyer for Brown's family, said that based on the witness statements, it appeared that Brown had been shot while driving away from the sheriff's deputy. So that's, of course, we can't really know until we see the video here. To my understanding, Brown was not armed, and the bullets entered into the back of the vehicle. So very similar to a Dante Wright situation that we saw in Minnesota just weeks earlier. The sheriff's office statement on Saturday followed a day of emotional appeals from family members, activists, lawyers pushing for accountability in Brown's death. If the shooting and the killing was self-defense or proper use of force, then show the truth. Reverend William Barber II said in a news briefing on Saturday. If it wasn't, show the truth. But sheriff, DA, law enforcement, you can't just shut up. You must speak up. And it looks like they are trying to do so. So it's going to be very interesting to see Roy Cooper. Yeah, he came out, and he's the governor of North Carolina, Democrat, said the body camera footage should be released. And it looks like it will be, and it's going to be very interesting to see the specifics of that case. Because the body camera, it can really make things a lot clearer. As we saw with both the Ma'Khia Bryant case, we saw how close she was to stabbing that other woman at the scene, and that obviously led a lot of people to, I know it changed my certain perception of the case from the way it was described versus the way it appeared on video. But in the Daunte Wright situation, it kind of increased outrage, and most of the time, it really can increase outrage in a big way because it really puts a visual picture in the viewer's mind of the crime that was done. Obviously, very famously in the George Floyd case. That wasn't a body cam video, but it was devastating to watch nonetheless. The shooting in North Carolina pretty much took place one day after a jury found a former police officer guilty of murder in Floyd's death, and as the police violence against black people has come under intense scrutiny across the country. A spokesperson for the sheriff's office said that 7 of the department's 55 full-time deputies have been placed on paid administrative leave after Brown's death. So pretty strong there. Brown's family said they were told that no drugs or weapons have been retrieved from the property or the car, their lawyer said on Sunday. The legal team has not yet seen the search warrant that officials said they were executing at the time of the shooting. So that also has marks of the Breonna Taylor case. They were executing a search warrant on her boyfriend that was they believed he was a drug smuggler or something, or that house was being used as a place to smuggle drugs. So Brown, he said, was taken by the hands of the ones who are sworn to protect and serve. This is his lawyer, Daniels, speaking, saying this is a moment we have to seize and take back accountability and transparency. And that's one thing. Just clawing back that accountability and the fact that, people are going to be punished for the things that they do. That is one step. But then the second step is making sure that these kids and these black people all across the country are not killed in the first place. Wouldn't that be something? Believe it or not. So, hopefully Andrew Brown gets justice and we get a further picture of what is going on in this situation. So, we are going to get right to our last story about gun rights after this. Ladies and gentlemen, so much to look forward to here on the Spencer Walsh Radio Network. We have nothing but fun all week long nowadays. News Flash, once again, is on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays as we head into the spring. Uncultured will be Saturdays, and then kind of a mix, chill atmosphere for you. Saturday nights live. And Hidden History will be new every Thursday. Got a great new episode. And, of course, great new episode coming for this Thursday. And last Thursday, we started off our second season by talking about the 1960 election, JFK, and the Chicago Mafia. So, it's like The Irishman, folks. It's just a podcast version of The Irishman, narrated by yours truly. You can listen wherever podcasts are sold not wherever podcasts are sold, but you'll buy podcasts, but wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen. Spreaker.com/TSWS, iHeartRadio, Google, Spotify, Apple, of course, rate and review, get that going. So, anyway, so we have a very interesting key critical gun rights case the Supreme Court's about to take up for the first time in more than a decade. They agreed to take up a lower court ruling that upheld New York's restrictive gun permit law. At issue in the case, and this again, probably how it's going to turn out. Maybe John Roberts is going to be that swing vote. But, it's not even John Roberts who's a swing vote anymore. We're going to need one of the other justices, maybe Gorsuch or something like that. I don't know. So the case will likely be argued in the fall. So that's things do move very slowly with the Supreme Court. And pretty much the name of the case is, by the way, this article here is appearing in NPR. The previous article appeared in the New York Times. Yeah, this is NPR Scott Newman. So the case is called the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Corlett, and it's all about how much the Second Amendment protects the right of individuals to carry concealed weapons outside of their home for self-defense. The court's decision follows mass shootings in recent weeks in Indiana, Georgia, Colorado, and California, and a surge in firearm sales, particularly to first-time gun buyers. So yeah, this is a very interesting situation. It's a situation where there is a lot of like coming from my previous positions, kind of like liberal, and then kind of get a little bit more left, liberal, democratic, socialist, and kind of go down the line. You kind of start to see the reason why people would want to buy guns more and more, and the justifications that there are behind it. And we have had and guests on the show have had many passionate discussions. When we had our kind of debate episode for our 500th episode, we had a great discussion on gun rights with Zach Lifschultz and James Weld on there debating as well, and Kate Henge's coming on. So that is something. If you want to return to that to learn a little bit more about the left, because all those guys are pretty left wing, but yet the dispute on guns to a large extent. And what picture should gun ownership take in America? Like, that is a key question that is being asked. And do you need, are guns important to protect yourself? How far is too far? All that stuff. And I kind of am a lot more sympathetic to it. But again, the permits especially with the concealed carry is so important, because concealed carry is one thing. And I think it is a separate, you could argue, and I'm sure many people will argue that, the opposite of this, but I think it makes sense to say that it is separate from just owning a gun, because the concealed carry permit it is harder to detect. Obviously, it is more dangerous, and you can kind of get away with more as opposed to you have a clear gun on your holster like you're a police officer, or it's in your pants and hidden. Some of those, I used to get these ads on YouTube where it was a very, very disturbing. This kind of comes to my mind whenever I think of concealed carry, but I used to get these ads that whenever there was it would just always start off with this guy filming of this guy's waist. He would just reach into his pants, seeming like nothing was there, and pull out a massive firearm. I was like, whoa, like that. If that stuff exists, and it's just a special little leather pouch for your firearm. Hopefully keep it on safety there, but concealed carry, it really is, I think, a different world from just you're owning a normal gun, you keep it in a case, and you go out shooting once in a while. That to me is perfectly an acceptable thing to do. If you're hunting, I personally think that hunting for sport is really I could not see the appeal to it. Just shooting animals down. But very few people have to hunt to live. But if you're just hunting on with a rifle on a regular basis for your own enjoyment, or shooting in the range because that's a perfectly fun, valid thing to do. That is something that I think Americans should be able to do. But if it's very, very hard for me to make the case to anybody that you're especially if you're living in a lot of the places where people have guns live. They're in these kind of very homogenous suburban communities that are not places where you need to have a gun very well concealed in your pants and no one's going to be able to find it. You can be able to pull it out in a quick draw at a moment's notice. Bam, bam, bam. That's not the reality of life for most gun owners in this country. It's just, I think, really an aesthetic situation. So while most states permit gun owners to carry their firearms while they go out, New York and 7 other states have some restrictions. In 2008 and 2010, the High Court overturned handgun bans in Washington, D.C. and Chicago, respectively, in a pair of landmark cases that redefined gun rights in the United States. In those cases, a sharply divided court ruled that the Second Amendment right to bear arms is an individual right, not one associated with the militia, as the court had previously implied. Those decisions marked a huge victory for the NRA and other gun rights associations. However, in the past decade, the court have largely avoided this gun rights cases in general. The latest case out of New York State would be the first major firearms ruling since Justice Amy Coney Barrett joined last year, solidifying a solid 6-3 conservative majority. In April 2020, the court sent a challenge to New York City ban on handguns, outside the home back to the lower court without ruling, including case was moot because the city had already changed the law. But in a concurring opinion at the time, Justice Brett Kavanaugh recommended the justices take up another Second Amendment case soon, suggesting the lower courts may not properly applying the Supreme Court's earlier gun rights rulings with the Constitution here. So that is something that, Kavanaugh and those other kind of, traditionalist right-wing judges that we know and love so well and so much, they're going to have a field day over, I predict, in no time at all. All right, that's all the news flash we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on Wednesday.